All right, guys. Today we have here on Brigitta Ruha. She cut her teeth as a segment marketer at Vodafone, making dozens of acquisition campaigns in TV, out of home, and digital ads for new portfolio launches in the EU. She then ran marketing at Recart, an SMS marketing app, and Plobal apps before starting her own growth agency to teach more companies how to do efficient growth through trigger and intent based outreach. Her company is called Growth Today. Brigitta, very nice to have you on today.
Thank you, Alan, for the quick intro, and really excited to be here and chat more about triggers, outbound in general, and what the future holds for us.
Awesome. Great to have you on. So, Brigitte, why don't you start off with a quick intro about yourself and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, yeah. So as you kind of also highlighted, so I have been working in the B2B SaaS space for a while, in total for 5 years. And basically, we just kind of started to realize the very first mind of career is that usually we have to, we have to achieve high and big revenue targets. And we also have this kind of small lean teams. And we have to figure out how to drive revenue. And of course, when you have a big company, and where you have a lot of money, it's just like a lot easier. You have bandwidth, you have all resources, but that's usually not the majority of case when you are seed or pre-seed stage or just series A or B. You still have to kind of figure out how to do more with less. And this is how I ended up in the sales area, but mostly thinking from growth marketing side is that how we can a little bit hack our strategies and gain additional efficiencies. And that's why I ended up in the outbound and trigger-based marketing or event-based marketing or trigger-based SaaS. I don't think that it actually matters how we call it. And once we figure out that, okay, this is actually a really scalable channel, and for a lot of companies and really big companies from Rippling, Gorgeous, Pigment, Spandex, they also scale their team. And as well as at Power, I just thought that, okay, why not, replicate the same playbook for other companies, and that's how I ended at my growth today. And very happy to be here on your show and deep dive into this topic.
This is a fascinating topic that I think everyone's always talking about is this whole intent-based approach and then combining that with AI. So it seems like ripe for the moment that we should be talking about this topic today. At Plobal, it seems like you already built out the playbook. Very curious about what the setup was like. Like, how is Plobal set up? What resources did you have? What did you have to change? What processes did you institute? And then what were the results?
Yeah, great question. So basically, how we started, and I think this is what I also tell to our clients is that really start small before like scaling anything. And how we basically started is that we had our first sales team members, so just really 4, 6 people, like in total senior A's, but because they were senior A's, they were mostly focused closing the deals. And we have a kind of good inbound flow generally, but at the time when I was hired and other senior members, we basically wanted to ramp up the growth for the company. It's good that we have inbound leads, but we wanted to open up other channels. So how we approach this is just really kind of splitting the kind of target account and run programmatic outbound on those companies where we couldn't touch or we didn't want to touch the sales reps time because we wouldn't have any way to do so. And the sales reps were also doing their own first outbound outreach. And we started to see basically, because there was also a volume perspective there, and also because we were really doing this kind of relevancy base, meaning that if you really think about triggers and our buying intents in the data, regardless how we are calling it, it helps us to be more relevant. It's not actually personalization or customization. It just really helps us identify maybe a better time to talk or circle back or re-engage the companies. And that was the main strategy of how we started kick off this programmatic outbound that was not spammy, it was really personalized. And we had the kind of hypothesis that if we have this trigger on the companies or the contact level, this means something. So that's what we were doing to kind of test if we are actually right. So, for example, if somebody installed our competitor or just a similar complementary service such as subscription or basically anything that can have mobile app relation or we are integrated with, basically it's a complementary service. And it usually means that you are installing an app because you are looking to solve certain challenges or just improve retention or acquisition. And those thoughts were right. but we wanted to validate. So we have how we started this role is a kind of MVP, meaning that, okay, we have these 10, 5 ideas of triggers that we would like to figure out if we are actually right. And we basically score them because maybe one company can have 5, 10 triggers, but we can't and we shouldn't, we should actually prioritize which can be the most important. And that's how we started. We listed 10 triggers at the company and contact level and prioritize each of them, which is the most important for us. Of course, if they are using a competitor technology, it's absolutely more important than if they are using our integration partner or if they are posting on social or something. And that was the main strategy of how we started. And we just really started at the kind of smaller base, really 6, 7 emails, some additional touches, and we're figuring out that if we actually have it right. And basically the very, very first project was a few months, like 1, 2, 3 months, and but we were actually just wanted, actionable responses and gather interest. But it actually went pretty well, so we started chatting with big brands and bigger brands, and that was the time when the second phase started, meaning that, okay, how we can implement this in the reps playbook as well, because during this kind of, let's say, put it MVP phase, the channels were separated. So the A's were also running their own outbound on a smaller level at a more high target accounts. At the same time, we're also running these tests as a kind of MVP. And as we started to realize this is actually working, it really actually makes sense to reach out to these companies. The question was, okay, we have right now, and we were at that stage hiring SDRs and BDRs. How we will implement this framework into the daily activities of our reps, and not just running this as a complementary channel, basically.
Mm. How did you institute your intent-based approach in the beginning? Coming back to that, you had 10 triggers that you evaluated and then you stack ranked, and maybe if they were using a competitor technology, then that would be at the top. How did you implement that? What tools did you use? What processes? How much time? Human versus machine?
Yeah, it might be an e-commerce specific use case, so some of
Mm-hmm.
these tools might not be appropriate. But basically, how we started is we started using store leads and charm. The reason why, because what we see in the e-commerce, and again, it might be an e-commerce space, but I do think some niches can have and have some requirements. But the tools that we use is definitely store leads and charm because they are extremely rich in data. And generally, e-commerce is extremely rich in data. I would say what I have seen compared to other industries, e-commerce is maybe more rich because we know what their tech stack is, we know what their tech spend, which might be not accurate, but we also know their average product price. We can get their bestsellers. We can also get how they are growing on socials. So we are getting a lot of information. And generally, these tools were also a kind of great use. So basically, we just started to use this data directly from their webhook and basically pushed it to our CRM and also our sales sequences, and basically started segmenting the list based on that. And on top of that, we also had tools that give us enrichment, meaning that, okay, if we know this company, cool, but of course we need the key decision makers as well. So we started to use Hunter, Rocket Reach, and Apollo to figure out which one gives us the best coverage in email and as well as phone, as some of our SDRs and A's also do cold calling. So we needed the phone number as well.
So it seemed like you orchestrated a lot of workflows, and then that would eventually end with the SDR. That's super cool. How did you merge the two together? Like once you had the playbooks down, how did you merge it into the A's workflow? What did that look like?
Yeah, well, that included a lot of iteration. As we were also building the plane, we were also learning a lot. So how we started, and I will also highlight that I think what the key learnings and how I will start it right now is that how we really started is we picked and started to working 1 or 2 A's the first time. And the reason being is, it's just so easier if you have any issue or any bug or anything, and you just manage that with one rep instead of, having a kind of Q&A session all the time with 10 reps. It's more, you can waste more time and it's maybe not that helpful. So before rolling this kind of big playbook to 10 plus sales rep, what our approach was is just, okay, let's work directly with one AEs, see how it goes, what are generally the kind of sentiment, what are generally the kind of questions, because we did not want it, replace the work of the the sales, but we did want it to enable them and be a kind of ally, and how we can think about more programmatically of these approaches. And this was also important because, generally speaking, e-commerce is extremely competitive right now. It was also 2-3 years ago, but right now it's even more competitive. So we definitely wanted to kind of nail this down. So first we did this only working with 2-3 reps, and once we were understanding what are the general, kind of questions, how we can best manage their time and their day-to-day workflow, and how exactly it looks like in tech stack and tooling perspective, then we added the additional reps as well. But in the meanwhile, as a phase two, we iterated on the sales teams as well. So we had dedicated SDR on outbound and inbound, and then basically then in the phase three, no A's were working on this channel, just only the BDRs. And we also introduced Spin, a kind of small competition to further improve the results, and also make them more engaging, and make sure that they also incentivized to work on this channel, which was also a great thing to do if you're working with sales teams.
That's crazy. Hyper efficient system that you guys have created. And I think it's worth talking more about how you integrate these automated systems into AE and SDR workflows, because they had their own whatever they were doing before you introduced this new system, and then you're trying to change it to make it better for them, but there's a little bit of friction between. Any advice for people who want to implement something similar, where they're trying to take an intent-based approach with a team that maybe was focused more on leads, they don't know what account-based marketing is? How did you get the buy-in from the team, and what did that look like going from 2 to 5 to 10? What did you have to prove out? And at the end, what did the final playbook look like at the end of the day, the final palace?
Yeah. I think getting buy-in is generally a kind of interesting topic, and why it's so important and how you can get that. I think one thing that was definitely helpful for me is that if you really take a look at the high scaling companies, like really and extremely high growth companies, you can see some patterns. They usually have a growth advisor, which can be sales or kind of like marketing, or the combined, which is growth marketing or something, but they do have advisors. So they are not like they're trying to get to root when they are not, figuring out all the things, but instead starting to standardize and also use other company's playbook. And I think it's a great way, because you have to learn, and it still can mean that you might be not that successful on that channel, but at least you're eliminating the number of risk and pitfalls and failures. And the second thing, when we are thinking about really high growth companies, are definitely they always found 1 or 2, 3 channels that they are testing, iterating really frequently, and scaling it. And the channel has to be scalable, right? So SEO, almost anything can be scalable, but you have to somehow operationalize it. And that's how we ended up from the buying perspective. Like, hey, what is the worst case that can happen? Like, okay, you spent a few resources on it, team members, salaries, tech stack, but if it works, the value is really obvious, and it's a really good thing. So really worst case, I don't think that any company should be so afraid of testing any channel. I think it's a kind of prioritization. But when I started at working at Global, I was kind of the very first early team members from in the North America team, so I had the chance to influence this. So this can be also something that, from a kind of timing perspective, but if you are the later stage member, then I think it's still possible to influence this, since the company will have more resources, so you will still have the chance to test it. And it just really kind of like managing expectations. So if you don't know what your messaging works, or if you have never run outbound, you probably should not aim for having and aiming for driving 50 demo bookings per month. But it can be a really realistic scenario to have one, or if you are also going up market or enterprise, then the volume is also lower, but it's still worth it, because you will have an ops person and a marketer and the sales team, and they can sit down and they can talk to each other, and they can implement certain kinds of playbooks like this.
Oh, that's a really great point. And honestly, it's difficult to get the buy-in in the beginning, but like you said, getting a growth advisor is huge, because you can listen to folks inside your company, but it's different from between listening to folks that you work with every single day. You know their strengths, you know their weaknesses, and then someone who is a perceived expert on the outside who's done it a million times.
Exactly.
And also to your point, going back to making small bets, how did you know that this was working? Like you said, ABM is one of the hardest things to prove ROI on. How did you know that this was worth investing more resources into?
Yeah, really the first 3 weeks, like we launched it, our copy was not the greatest, really. Like it was like, okay, definitely not the worst, but not the best either. And we got good responses, and we got good responses really just qualified leads and really from the top tier. And that was, I think it was a really kind of good thing that we get these because it actually really helped with the buy. And so that's definitely something. And the second thing that I would highlight here that what else can help is that generate the results, like just kind of calculating that how many prospects you have outreached, and what kind of early sentiments that you can get. That can also give you to build a kind of business case. And of course, that business case will be, a little bit far away from the reality, the first, because you don't know yet what's the actual benchmark, because you have to, run any kind of program at least 6 months. But if you do think about yourself, and when you are asking, okay, should I be, focusing on SEO or should I be focusing on ads, you will do the same exercise, meaning that how I can build a kind of close to reality benchmarks and the business case and make sure if it makes sense. And again, as I mentioned, there is not a real big risk, right? Because if your team is not focusing on too much channels and strategic initiatives, then there is no real risk. If you are just testing one channel per quarter or month, depending on, of course, what your resources, you're still making a same bet, because 1 month of resources, it's nothing, because you can win or you can lose that, but it's not something that, if it's something not working, you are not going to do it for months anyway.
Personally, from your perspective, do you try to opt for more testing or do you try to double down on things that are working? Because certain channels like organic, especially, it's hard to have any sort of predictable outcome. And you could be spending time testing for a while, or you're looking for the long tail of benefits to come maybe a year from now. So how do you think about that and communicating? And what's your typical strategy when you go in to help a company?
Yeah, I really like this question. I think it's as a mindset perspective. You have to know what's the kind of company culture and company DNA. I do think that if the company DNA is very technical or very, operation focused, and by operation, I mean revenue operation or sales or marketing operation, they try to, automate these kind of things. I think testing very fast, it's a kind of good approach, but generally betting on big long-term benefits or results versus testing and iterating and scaling down, probably I would, just start one channel and try at least 5 things until I'm not be able to get success. And then if it does not give us any kind of results, then I would move on. And if it does give me results, good results, or either on effectiveness or on ROI, then I would just scale it down instead of moving to another channel, because I do think that if you find something successful before moving to the next, shiny item, it's just better if you scale it down. Not down. If you start to scale
it
it,
up.
yeah, scale it up.
Makes sense. Less risky. Double down instead of get 2x return. Maybe get 5x return because you own that channel. And I like what you said about everything can be scaled, but it starts to break down as you get further up, and you need to operationalize and build processes around it to maintain the same level of growth. For yourself, how did you decide to start growth today? What was the genesis?
Yeah, great question. As I mentioned, I will love generate the space, and I was a very curious person. That I think I also played a big part here. But the TLRD was that I just really enjoyed being in the space, and I was also doing a kind of consultancy work to also show this, or at least some parts, so they can bring their internal experts in house and can scale this further. And when I saw that, okay, this is actually a successful playbook, generally speaking, to a lot of companies, even if it's not B2B SaaS. I also seen this working at agencies. I just thought that, okay, why not build this for not just one company but others, or at least show what the possibilities there, because the chances are if something is really working, you are going to build a team around it. But it's a good thing to give value, also learn other approaches, also learn other industries, and that's what made me think that instead of doing this for one company, what if I can have a bigger impact in the world and a bigger impact in my professional life, because I can see more examples, I can learn a lot faster as well. And that's made me think about launching Growth Today.
Oh, makes total sense. Now you're on the other side of the table. You are the growth advisor for other companies that are bestowing the wisdom that other people need. Well, Brigitta, I know you have to go right now. Really nice having you on the show. For more people to find out more about you, where can they find you?
LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn if you just type my name. I do regularly post a lot of actionable stuff, regardless of if you're already running these kind of playbooks or just looking for some inspiration. So definitely, if you try to search for Brigitta Ruha, you can find me. And the second thing is, of course, our website, which will be going to be revamped, and there will be a lot of those actionable playbooks for totally free, including workflows. So if you are curious to keep in touch with us on that part, just visit growthtoday.co.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us, Brigitta.
Thank you. It was great to be in the show.
Awesome.